Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm Ali Aslan. I'm an international TV presenter and journalist, and on behalf of the Latvian Institute of International Affairs and its strategic partners, NATO and the Latvian Foreign Ministry, it is my great pleasure to welcome you today to today's side event of the NATO's Foreign Ministers meeting in Riga. It's wonderful that we can meet you in Riga in person. It's not a given these days, obviously, but let me also take the opportunity to welcome everyone joining us online here via today's live stream. Today's conference, today's session is titled NATO's Outlook Towards 2030 and Beyond. And I don't have to tell you, there are numerous challenges for the alliance, not just by 2030, but these days. A lot of these challenges we will tackle here on stage today in numerous discussions, presentations, and panels. Very much looking forward to the discussions we're going to have here. Let me also point out, of course, no conference is complete without a hashtag. This conference is so important. We have 3 hashtags. So hashtag number 1, NATO 2030, simple enough. The second one is NATO in Riga, make it a bit more personal. And the third one is RSF 2021, RSF obviously standing for Riga Security Forum. So you'll be seeing me up here quite a bit on stage, but I also see a lot of friends, colleagues, and esteemed speakers who will be up here on stage in just a bit. But without further ado, let's kick it off. And I'm going to yield it now to our host today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the director of the Latvian Institute of International Affairs, Andris SPRÜDS.
Thank you, Ali, for a kind introduction. Secretary General, honorable presidents, ministers, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, friends, good morning. On behalf of Latvian Institute of International Affairs and partners, I have a great pleasure to welcome all of you today at the wintry Riga, at the same time, of course, at the side event of the NATO Foreign Ministers meeting in Riga, which is called NATO Outlook Towards 2030 and Beyond. The outlooks are strongly shaped by the experiences of the past. 15 years ago, Latvia hosted a NATO summit, which was very symbolic to demonstrate that the Euro-Atlantic community was becoming whole and free. A few years earlier, our president, Margarita in historic Prague summit, expressed it eloquently. We in Latvia would like to build our future on the rock of political certainty, not on the shifting sands of indecision. We would like to enjoy the full sunshine of the liberties and rights that NATO has been defending so long. These words resonate strongly also today. The aspiration towards whole, free, and secure world is a permanent mission. It's a challenging task, especially, of course, in the times of uncertainties. Achieving the goal starts at home, within and beyond the most successful alliance in history, among the like-minded nations. And NATO's Foreign Ministers meeting in Riga reminds us of the importance of cooperation among allies and with partners. And alliances and partnerships are also indispensable in organizing such an event. We appreciate highly our cooperation with a number of counterparts, with a number of institutions. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Latvia has been a very important partner for a long time. And with this, I am very much delighted to give a floor for opening speech to the Latvian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Edgars RINKÄVIČS. Minister has been in ministerial position already for the last 10 years, the longest serving Latvian minister. But also I should add the key person in Latvia's engagement with NATO, I would say already for almost the last 3 decades. So with this, I am wishing a dynamic conference. The Minister Edgars RINKÄVIČS, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Dear Secretary General, dear Jens, dear colleagues, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Welcome to this event, which will serve as an important contribution to an open debate and, at the same time, an intellectual warm-up before the NATO Foreign Ministers meeting that will start in a few hours this afternoon. Dear Secretary General, let me welcome you back to Riga for a NATO official gathering. You may recall that it was exactly 15 years ago when Latvia hosted the NATO summit with you as then Prime Minister of Norway among the participants. The world has not become a better place over those years. However, let me reaffirm my conviction that NATO has grown more united and more in sync with the surrounding world. There are at least two aspects that highlight the importance of this public diplomacy event. First, NATO is ever evolving and transforming the alliance of nations, ready to adjust to the requirements of the times to ensure security and peace of its members. Indeed, we are in the midst of transforming the alliance so that it is fit for addressing the evolving challenges. Namely, we keep working on implementation of the transformative NATO 2030 agenda. At the same time, we are about to take the next step. We are to commence a political consultation among the allies to update the strategic concept of NATO. Second, it is imperative to involve society representatives, experts, think tankers, businesses, and especially youth. In this context, it is important for the Latvian public to hear firsthand views of the allies coming from across the regions of the alliance. Therefore, I am particularly thankful, Mr. Secretary General and the ministers, for your willingness to join this conference. Let me thank also the Latvian Institute for International Affairs and all its partners for organizing this event. I hope that ideas and suggestions will echo also at the Foreign Ministers meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, there are many topics on the ministers' plates for today and tomorrow. But the most important of them, the one that will secure a place for Riga Ministerial in NATO's history, is launching of the process of preparing the next strategic concept. In fact, I find it highly symbolic that we launch the process here in Riga, in the northeast flank of the alliance, just to be finished in southwest of the alliance in the Madrid summit next year, a true 360 degrees approach. I am sure we will hear it multiple times these days that NATO has adapted effectively to be the most successful alliance. It is not a cliché. To my account, in the past 30 years, NATO has transformed a number of times. Politically, from creating numerous partnerships after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and ending with enlargement. Militarily, starting from out-of-area operations to the reassurance and reinforcement of the easternmost members of the alliance. However, success of the past does not make it granted truth in a decade to come. An overall effort is required for NATO to remain the most successful alliance also in 2030. And the political will and the commitment in form of resources are required as well. To kick off the debates today, let me walk through some of our takes on what is important to reflect in the next strategic concept. The security environment has deteriorated significantly since the last strategic concept was written. As we speak, Russia is concentrating its armed forces on the borders with Ukraine. Just 2 months ago, in its strategic exercise, Zapad 2021, Russia demonstrated full military command and control over Belarus. Russia has recently been avoiding dialogue with NATO. Those are just the most recent reminders of why Russia continues to pose a challenge. Terrorism remains a threat too. Large swaths of poorly governed and controlled territories eventually become breeding grounds for terrorists and thus threat to international security. Besides that, the global security environment has become much more competitive politically, with authoritarian regimes questioning the rules-based international order. That challenge extends to the technological area as well. Not only in the digital, but also the kinetic domain, terms of distance and time become more and more relative. Borders of domains and regions become more and more blurred. It is obvious that we have to address the issue of a more assertive China. Its rapid military modernization cannot be ignored in the next strategic concept. China is already here with us in Europe, in our gadgets, and in our critical infrastructure. It is already present in our neighboring regions. I cannot imagine China being left out of the picture. As with all the previous strategic concepts formulated in times when the security environment is tense and unstable, the issues of military adaptation tend to dominate the agenda. Collective defense is the ultimate purpose of NATO. The alliance has been successful and adequate in its adaptation. The enhanced forward presence of Canada-led Allied troops here in Latvia is just one example out of many. The adaptation is never-ending. Secretary General is leading us on a daily basis, and each ministerial takes another step towards ensuring that our defense and deterrence is up to date and fit for purpose. We have to make sure that NATO continues to have the right forces, both conventional and nuclear, and capabilities at the right place and the right time to protect allies from any threat. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in an everlasting and fierce competition with our adversaries in all domains of new and emerging challenges and threats, be it hybrid, cyber, space, or any new technology. The allies have to be ready to address them. We see that hybrid actions have become a preferred and dominant modus operandi by our adversaries. As we see from the ongoing hybrid attack by the Lukashenko regime, the hybrid threats can be diverse in nature and aimed at several allies at the same time. In circumstances like this, it is no more a national responsibility to withstand and build resilience. The situation deserves a collective response and a collective resilience. Therefore, I believe the way the alliance addresses the task of collective defense has to be broadened and augmented. Otherwise, systemic weaknesses, if skillfully exploited, can lead to erosion of the very cohesion and deterrence capability of the alliance. Here in Riga, we will discuss lessons learned from our mission in Afghanistan. We should be able to set objectives and devote resources to any other out-of-area operation in a more effective manner. NATO is not alone. Our network of partnership is of high value both to NATO and our partners. All the partnerships are important, but that does not make them all being alike. We should aim for a more individual, tailor-made approach. There are partnerships that are helpful to fulfilling our core tasks, like the ones with Finland and Sweden. There are partnerships key to defense and resilience to the entire Europe, like the ones with Georgia and Ukraine, in Western Balkans or North Africa. And there are partnerships important for a globally security environment, like the ones in Asia Pacific, the Gulf, or Africa. There is a unique partnership that has to be reflected properly in the strategic concept, the one with the European Union. It has to ensure an even stronger mutual complementarity in relations between NATO and the EU. Strategic aims are the same for both. There should be no contradiction or competition between them. I see no reason to have one. The strategic concept of NATO and the strategic compass of the European Union should complement each other. And last but not least, NATO stands firm behind Article 10 of Washington Treaty, and NATO doors remain open. Latvia will continue to provide its support and assistance to countries aspiring to join our alliance. From our own experience, we know how torrid the past can be, but it's doable. Mr. Secretary General, dear colleagues, Latvia is investing and will continue to invest in its defense and in strengthening the deterrence and defense capability of the alliance. We will continue to foster unity, solidarity, and cohesion of the alliance and a strong transatlantic link with the United States and Canada. I will stop here by thanking once again the organizers and being eager to hear the keynote speech by the Secretary General, followed by the discussion of presidents, ministers, and experts. Dear Jens, finally the floor is yours.
Minister RINKÄVIČS, dear Edgars, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's really great to be back in Riga, back in Latvia. For many reasons, you are a staunch ally, you contribute to NATO missions and operations in many ways, and you meet the 2% guideline, and you host the NATO battle group here in Latvia. So it's really good to be here, not least because we have some real snow. There are many nice things to say about Brussels, but they don't have the same kind of high quality snow as we find here in Latvia. So that's a good thing. And let me also thank the organizers of this event today, the Institute of International Affairs and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for hosting us and organizing this event. I am looking forward to deliver my speech because this gives me an opportunity to share with you some ideas on how to develop the next strategic concept of NATO. Next to the Washington Treaty, the strategic concept is NATO's most important guiding document. The last one dates back to 2010. Since then, our security has changed beyond recognition. Today, we live in an age of systemic competition. Russia and China are undermining the rules-based international order. The balance of power is shifting. Democracy and freedom is under heavy pressure. The next strategic concept is an opportunity to set out how NATO will deal with this new reality. 5 elements are critical: protecting our values, reinforcing our military power, strengthening our societies, taking a global outlook, and building NATO as the institutional link between Europe and North America. Let me go through each of these in more detail. First, we must protect the values that underpin our alliance. NATO was created to defend democracy, freedom, and the rule of law. These values define who we are. They are not optional, and they must continue to guide us in a more complex world. These values are under pressure, both from outside our alliance and from within our own nations. Authoritarian regimes are pushing back on the international rules-based order. They promote alternative models of governance. They use propaganda and disinformation to undermine our societies, and malicious cyber tools to interfere in our elections. At the same time, there are extremists and political groups within our own countries that do not respect our democratic values. We saw a stark example of this on the 6th of January when the US Congress was attacked with the aim to impede a peaceful transition of power. Worldwide, worldwide, democracy is in decline, and there is less trust in democratic institutions. So more than ever, we need to demonstrate the strength of our democratic model and protect our values abroad and at home. Second, we must reinforce our military power. The 2010 strategic concept stated that the Euro-Atlantic area is at peace. But today, we can no longer take our peace and security for granted. The Russian regime is aggressive abroad and oppressive at home. Its military buildup on Ukraine's borders is of concern. Meanwhile, the Chinese Communist Party is using its economic and military might to coerce other countries and control its own people, expanding its global footprint from Africa to the Arctic, in space and in cyberspace. In addition, cyber attacks are becoming more frequent and sophisticated. Terrorist threats persist. Nuclear weapons are proliferating, and climate change is driving instability and fueling crisis. To keep our people safe in today's unpredictable world, we must continue to strengthen and modernize our deterrence and defense. We need to ensure our militaries are ready and prepared for any threat, with the right equipment, the right training, and the right skills. But to ensure our security, it is not enough to have strong militaries. We also need strong societies. And this brings me to my third point. Societal disruption can be quick and easy. It only takes a click of a button to shut down our networks. A social media message to disinform citizens. And a pandemic to paralyze our societies. In today's interconnected and digital world, our nations may be more prosperous, but they are also more interdependent and more vulnerable. Our competitors or potential adversaries are exploiting this. They are investing heavily in our critical infrastructure as a way to interfere in our societies, and using our dependence on essential supplies to further their interests. In Europe, we need the gas to flow from Russia to keep warm and prevent an energy crisis. And we need the rare earth supplies from China to use our smartphones and computers. To make our society stronger, our people and our institutions must be able to better resist and bounce back from attacks. Our infrastructure must be more resilient and our supply chains more diverse and secure. This must be a collective effort. All allies have a part to play because we are only as strong as our weakest link. Fourth, a global outlook. NATO is and will remain an alliance of Europe and North America. But our region faces global security challenges. They require global awareness and global reach. We cannot confine security to specific regions. What happens far away matters for us right here. In fact, many of today's threats are not restrained by geography or lines on a map. Cyber and terrorist attacks, aggressive actions in space, the use of hypersonic light vehicles, intercontinental ballistic missiles, and climate change are truly global challenges. Dealing with them requires working closely with like-minded partner countries around the world. This is not just nice to do, it is an absolute necessity. We should intensify our cooperation with NATO's partners in the Asia-Pacific, Australia, Japan, South Korea, and New Zealand. We should engage more also with other countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And we should further strengthen our cooperation with the European Union and all our partners in Europe. We cannot ensure our security without working with others, but together we can shape the strategic landscape for the better, compete in a more competitive world, and defend the rules-based international order against those that seek to undermine it. Fifth, we need to build NATO as a strong institution. NATO is a powerful idea. Nations across Europe and North America coming together to defend one another and ensure our freedom and security. One for all and all for one. But NATO is more than an idea. It is an idea nested in a strong institution. This creates patterns of cooperation, culture and personal links, integration on a scale that is hard to undo. It has kept us all safe for over 7 decades. Never have so many people been so secure and so prosperous for so long. We cannot predict the future, but we will learn the lessons from the past. A strong alliance between Europe and North America is indispensable to our security, freedom, and prosperity. So we must continue to invest in NATO, politically, militarily, and financially, to make it even stronger, so it can continue to withstand any crisis and any changes in political weather. Today, I look forward to also hearing your ideas for the next strategic concept and what you think should be NATO's priorities going forward. Thank you so much for your attention.
Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Margarita ŠEŠELGYTE from the Institute of International Relations and Political Science, Vilnius University, and I will be moderating this short session. Secretary General, thank you very much for your thought-provoking and very comprehensive speech. It just shows that despite all efforts of NATO to reinvent itself, to reform, the security challenges are increasing every day. You have mentioned cyber, China, challenges to democracy, and there always have been many challenges, security challenges around, and NATO was able to adapt. And that's why NATO remains the most successful alliance in the history, most long-lived alliance in the history. I remember in 2008, a political scientist, Peter van Ham, was attributing this success of NATO to Madonna curve, as he said, referring to pop diva Madonna, who throughout her career was able to reinvent herself on a number of times. As he said, able to adapt to new tasks, but sticking to the true principles. And looking at the strategic concept of NATO, is there any Madonna curve, Madonna moment in the new strategic concept, and what it is?
I don't know. First of all, because I am not here to tell you exactly what is going to be in the next strategic concept. That's for 30 allies to discuss, and then finally to decide when we meet at the at the next summit in Madrid in 2022, next year. But I am absolutely confident that when we agree the next strategic concept, it will once again demonstrate NATO's ability to change, to adapt. Because, as you said, NATO is the most successful alliance in history for two reasons. Partly because we have been able to stand together, despite the fact that we are different. We are 30 nations from both sides of the Atlantic with different history, different culture, different political parties in power. And sometimes we also disagree, but we have always been able to unite around our core task, stand together, protect each other, one for all for one. That's reason number one why we are successful. The other reason is that we have been able to change. For 40 years we did one thing. We deterred the Soviet Union. And then the Soviet Union disappeared or was dissolved. The Cold War ended. And people said either NATO has to go out of business or out of area, and we went out of area. And then we helped to end two ethnic wars in the Balkans. After 9/11, we have been on the front line fighting terrorism. And now, after 2014, we have changed again and reinforced, implemented the biggest reinforcement of collective defense since the end of the Cold War. With the battle groups here in the Baltic countries, with tripling the size of the NATO response force, with increased defense spending, and also modernizing the NATO command structure. Now we need to change again. Partly we continue to see more assertive Russia, but also because we see more and more threats and challenges in cyber, in space, and the previous strategic concept, there we talk about Russia as a strategic partner. We don't mention China with a single word, and we hardly mention cyber, hybrid, and climate change. So I'm confident that the Madonna will be change, meaning that we will demonstrate the ability to once again adapt to a more complex, a more competitive world. And again, the environment we operate in is changing, NATO is changing, but the main idea is the same. And that is we are safer together, North America and Europe, when we stand together than when we try alone.
Thank you. You've mentioned China, and it is very interesting because tensions in Indo-Pacific are increasing and the waves are coming to this region as well. Me being from Lithuania, I can feel these waves coming. And the question is China enough military and enough close to NATO to react to what's happening in China and around?
So, first of all, China is not an adversary, and the rise of China also poses and provides opportunities for NATO allies, for our economies, for our markets, and the rise of China has also helped to lift hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, and of course this is important for all of us. And we need to engage with China on issues like arms control. I spoke with the Chinese foreign minister, and that was one of my messages, that China should actually be part of future arms control arrangements, and for instance on climate change. But at the same time, we need to realize that yes, China is in many ways far away, but China matters for our security. They will soon have the biggest economy in the world. They already have the second largest defense budget. They have the biggest navy. They are investing heavily in new, modern military capabilities, including hypersonic glide vehicles, expanding significantly their arsenal of intercontinental ballistic missiles. And of course, this is a global issue. It can reach all NATO territory. And then we also see that they are operating in cyberspace, in space, that matters for what's going on the Earth, also in this region, North America and Europe. So this idea that in a way we can confine our security to only the Euro-Atlantic area, that doesn't work anymore. We are an alliance of North America and Europe, but this alliance, this region, is faced with global threats and challenges, and the rise of China is one of them. And therefore, we also need to work with partners to address that, including in the Asia-Pacific region.
Can China be a new Madonna curve for NATO?
To be honest, I don't know exactly what you mean with this Madonna curve, but
NATO's ability to reinvent itself, to refocus.
No, yeah, but I think that I think, of course, NATO has to be focused, but I think the challenge now is that we cannot focus on one threat or one challenge. We don't have the luxury of choosing. There are so many things at the same time, and we need to be prepared also for the unforeseen. I remember the Cold War, and there were many things that were dangerous and we disliked with the Cold War, but it was in a way kind of clear and stable threat. It was the Soviet Union. Now there are many threats and challenges at the same time. Some are, as I say, visible and clear, and some are more covered and disguised. And we have the whole space and cyberspace domain, and we have also many different types of terrorists. So it's this combination of many things at the same time. So I don't think there will be one Madonna, there will be many. And that's exactly what we need to address.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your answers. I don't want to misuse my role as a moderator. I want to open the floor for the questions from the audience. I see 1, 2, probably we'll take 3 because we have like 10 minutes. So here, Sandra, could you please introduce yourself? Do you have a microphone? Microphone is needed there.
Thank you very much. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, Mr. Secretary General. It's a pleasure to meet you in person. I'm Sandra Fernandes from Portugal, from the University of Minho. I would like to ask you a question about smallness in NATO. Smallness doesn't mean the same thing for all small allies and partners. And for a country as Portugal, with the geopolitical refocus on the East, on the Indo-Pacific, there is a loss of geopolitical purpose somehow in the alliance. And I would like to ask you, how do you see the capacity of the next strategic concept to mobilize traditional allies who are there on the same ground and values, but who try as an EU member state as well to build capacities? But as a small member state with small companies, Portugal is not very competitive and is focusing on niches. Is that enough for you as a contribute? And how do you see other small member states contributing to the next concept? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Shall we go one by one?
Yeah, okay. It's not wrong by being small. There are many nice small countries in NATO, including my own. And the beauty of NATO is that we actually bring together 30 allies, some small, medium-sized, others big. And we sit around the same table and we make decisions together. And I value very much the contributions also from the smaller and medium-sized allies. And more than that, I also know that, for instance, the biggest ally, the United States, they value the fact that they in NATO have 29 friends and allies. Because when they face a more competitive world, when they see also the rise of China, they realize that NATO is not only good for Europe, but NATO is also good for North America and the United States, because that together we represent 50% of the world's GDP and 50% of the world's military might. Then I strongly believe that also small nations can be competitive, and small nations have excelled and demonstrated their capacity both in the defense domain but also in other domains. Of course, they cannot be competitive in all areas, in all industries, but they can specialize and they can be part of a broader effort. And one of the things we actually try to do with, for instance, the increased focus on technology, we have established something called Diana, an accelerator for innovation, and a new innovation fund. It's also to help and stimulate smaller allies to be part of this huge technological development which is taking place. I have to be brief because I understand there are more questions.
2 questions at least. We have somewhere there. Yeah.
Hi there. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Jens. I'm a member of Parliament from Canada. 2 quick questions. Number 1, if NATO is to be a community of values, is it necessary to have a mechanism for expelling members who fall below a certain democratic threshold? And secondly, you spoke about responding to global threats and yet still being a Euro-Atlantic alliance. Is there an argument for NATO simply stepping beyond its Euro-Atlantic identity to become a truly global alliance, admitting members in the Indo-Pacific and changing its orientation in that respect? Thank you.
I think it's important to distinguish between becoming a global alliance and having a global approach. NATO will remain an alliance of North America and Europe, and I will not recommend any change in that, and I don't expect allies will agree to anything else. Then we will remain, as it's stated in the Washington Treaty, that NATO is an alliance for Europe and Canada and the United States. And I don't expect any change in that. So NATO will remain an alliance for European nations and for Canada and the United States. But this big region, the North Atlantic region, is faced with big global challenges. And that's not actually nothing new. International terrorism, after 9/11, brought NATO to the border of China in Afghanistan. And we've been there for 20 years. Cyber attacks are global. So when we say that also the rise of China is a global challenge, it's not fundamentally anything new for NATO. So it is this, we will not become a global alliance, meaning having members from all over the world, from Asia or Asia Pacific or Africa, and then extend in a way the reach of Article 5. But yes, we will be an alliance that has to address global challenges and have a global approach, meaning also working with allies far away. New Zealand, Australia, Japan, South Korea, and many other. Colombia is a part of NATO in Latin America. So no, we will not become a global alliance, but we will remain an alliance of North America and Europe with a global approach, working with global partners all over the world, if that makes any sense for you. Then NATO doesn't have any mechanism to expel members, and I will not recommend that to be introduced in our founding treaty, in the Washington Treaty. Second, even if I recommend it, will never happen because we need consensus to do that. And I don't think that will promote our values. I think it's better to use NATO as a platform also to have honest and frank discussions when we are concerned about whether all allies meet the democratic standards. It's better to then sit there, address those issues in a open way, and raise our concerns. I have raised my concerns when I travel around to some allied countries about to what extent they live up to our democratic values of the rule of law, individual liberty. If these countries were expelled, then that platform would not longer exist. So I think it's better to keep NATO with all the members and then to raise our concerns and our issues on democratic standards within the alliance.
Thank you. Madam President.
Thank you and hello. First, I want to congratulate you on steering NATO and us all through an unpredictable period with a concept which prepared for a much more predictable world. And my question comes from that. Next concept, we have to take into account that there is even less visibility and that the risks we face are far closer linked to civil society, breaking our societies by misinformation, also economical attempts to take over our capabilities to decide, politically biased capital, all this. Where should NATO draw a line in taking these developments into account, but also saying we will deal with the basic job of NATO? These elements are for some other bodies to look at. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's great to see you again. And first of all, I think you point out something which is of great importance, and that is that before security was very much about military threats and also military responses to military threats. Now security is much more complex, and it's much more about covert and overt aggressive actions. Again, cyber, hybrid are examples of that. We also see, as I mentioned in my speech, the importance of our infrastructure, strong societies. We had a big discussion about 5G that started as a kind of only a financial or economic issue. Then allies realized that also has some serious security consequences. Energy supplies the same. So there's a much more blurred line between civilian and military threats and challenges, and also then civilian and military responses. And therefore NATO does not have all the tools in the toolkit to address all these different challenges, and especially those who are a bit mixed. There are many reasons, there are many things that means for NATO. Partly it means that we need also to address, for instance, resilience, strong societies, and we are stepping up. And this is, of course, a national responsibility to make sure that you have reliable infrastructure, that your societies are strong, but it's also collective responsibility. And it's enshrined in the Article 3 of the NATO Treaty. So building resilience, developing guidelines, setting standards, using NATO as a platform is part of the response to that. Another element of that response is to work with the European Union. Because the European Union has many of those tools. And then when you work together, of course, we are much stronger. We have much more tools in our toolkit together. And for me, it was a great privilege to travel together with Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission, to Lithuania and Latvia on Sunday. To be honest, that's actually the first time ever NATO Secretary General travels with a President of the European Commission. And for me, that just demonstrates that we have been able to lift over the last years the NATO-EU cooperation to unprecedented levels. I'm proud of that. It's a great thing. We should continue, we should push, and we should do more together, NATO and the European Union. Because we live in the same neighborhood, we face the same threats and the same challenges. More than 90% of the people living in the European Union, they live in the NATO country. So we are there together. But of course, also, more than 60%, how should I put it? Also, almost 60% of NATO's GDP is outside the European Union. So we need also NATO policies on these issues to encompass all NATO allies. But we need to work with the European Union, and that's something I look forward to. And we're also working on a joint declaration, third joint declaration with the EU presidents to chart the way forward. Then I see a lot of protocol people are now very nervous, so I feel this is going towards an end, but it was great to see you.
Thank you very much, Secretary General, indeed, for very open speech and very open answers. Maybe my questions sometimes were too, academic.
Yeah.
But I wish you lots of success with the strategic concept and lots of Madonna moments for NATO in the future. Thank you.